Hello, everybody. Welcome on our fourth episode of the podcast Way Out of Childhood Trauma. I am Barb Varclova from Trauma Responsive Programming, and with me is here Danijela Mrdak from Mind Freedom Therapy, and today's topic will be about the panic attacks and anxiety and how they are related to childhood trauma and what we can do with them. So Lela, how was your day today, and what you can tell other people about panic attacks?
Yes. Well, thank you, Barb, for inviting me in this fourth episode of our podcast. My day was very good. I had a very nice, relaxing day. And today we agreed to talk about anxiety disorder and panic attacks because so many people suffer from this mental health condition, especially after COVID. And many parents report that their children also suffer from panic attacks, anxiety disorders. And I would love to say something about anxiety disorders at the beginning. Anxiety disorders are conditions in which you have anxiety that doesn't go away and can get worse over time if it's not treated properly. The symptoms can interfere with your daily activities, such as job performance, relationships, schoolwork, family life. There are several types of anxiety disorders, including generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and phobias. Generalized anxiety disorder is very spread, and it's about the people who worry about many things in life, that are overthinking, and they worry constantly about different things in their lives, as like health, money, work, family. They worry about their children or elderly parents, and they think about how are they going to survive after Corona and adjusting to new life circumstances and global changes in the workplace, in the family life, and if they have these symptoms of anxiety almost every day for at least 6 months, they need to go to a professional, because anxiety is one of the most treatable mental health disorders, and people are not aware of that. And most people who have this disorder don't even try to get help. They just expect that this will go away, but it doesn't go away. And many of them face panic disorders. People with panic disorders have panic attacks, and these attacks are very sudden, repeated periods of intense, uncontrollable fear. And this fear appears where there is no actual danger. The attacks come quickly, and they can last several minutes or more. And after spending so much time in lockdown, spending time at home, many children now suffer from panic attacks, and they have developed social anxiety. They don't want to go back to school. They don't want to go to the playground and play and socialize with other kids. And also adults have these panic attacks. Also, one of the anxiety disorders are phobias and fears. People with phobias have an intense fear of something that possesses no danger or little actual danger. The fear can be about flying, spiders, insects, going to crowded places, being in social situations. And this is known as social anxiety. And many parents are now struggling to motivate their kids to find friends, to go to school, many kids don't have best friends now
Mm.
because they have digital friends, virtual friends, and this also contributes to more anxiety.
Yeah, but also when we often look at the reasons behind anxiety, and especially behind the panic attacks, we find out that it's the root cause is very often not in the present time, that it's in the childhood, that it's how they was brought up and how they developed its inner strength, or respectively often disconnected from their inner strength. And I had the one client, the beautiful young lady, very clever, and but she really struggled. She wasn't able to step out from her flat. She would get so frozen with panic attack, with feeling almost like having heart attack, just to step out from doors of her flat. And it she has it for months. She was almost like locked inside of her flat. But it's actually the reason was the situation when she was little, when we did the therapy, and find out where she lost that belief that she can protect herself, because she faced, for example, domestic abuse in this case. It doesn't she just witnessed it, and then she gets scared, and she lost that connection with that inner strength. And what would others see? What they will see, that they didn't see herself as she really was, as that adult, otherwise clever and good, like a very powerful woman in many other ways, but see herself as that weak child which will get hurt if it will go out. And it's often people don't realize that even are so severe, as you said, it's actually one of the most treatable things, because from my experience, almost everybody which came to work, which I work with, the panic attacks was gone after one session, because it's really about just release that reason. And the reason for overwhelming, or that reason for that overwhelming fear, is stuck up the fear from the past and disconnection from the own power strengths, of that feeling that I can feel safe in the world because I understand the world, I understand my emotions, and working with my intuition, because the intuition is giving us that responses: this is safe, this is not. And we often call it, this situation, as catastrophizing. Sometimes it's actually easier for people to describe it that way than just anxiety or health anxiety or that kind of anxiety. It's catastrophizing. They always looking for that, what worst can happen, and in their minds it's already happening, and that's creating their own emotion. It's like when we go into the movie, and that movie, it's a good movie, so it's moving our emotions. We can relate to it, but they creating the movie in their mind, about what the worst scenario can happen, and their body and their mind start reacting with the fear, or most likely, and they get frozen nearly, or they have symptoms as heart attack, almost look like they can have pain on the chest, cannot breathe, sometimes even faint out. But on the contrary to the common belief, these are actually, I don't want to say easy, but yeah, shorter than easy to treat, because without any antidepressant, which most of people go for, and they find out that it's not really helping them, because that's that fear from somewhere when they was little. That I had the one client which the fear was the seeing, because she was seeing somebody died as the child, and didn't cope with that, because nobody helped them to process that. Nobody helped them to process that witnessing of somebody died. And when we managed to process it, her catastrophizing stopped, and her anxiety was gone.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Barb. Anxiety is something that is caused by our anxious thoughts or our anxious beliefs that are very hard to control. And the most common causes are stress, genetics, and environment. And I'm working with a woman whose cause of anxiety was stress, because she got divorced from her first husband, and she had a lot of stress throughout the divorce. And after it was over, he was threatening to ruin every relationship, every marriage she ever has in the future. And she lived with those beliefs that he has the power to destroy her life again. And he proved to be someone who had no mercy. And she was very, very constantly worried, anxious. She had physical symptoms as aches and pains, muscle tensions, shortness of breath. She was restless, and the symptoms got worse over the period of 2 years. And when she got married again and had a child, the anxiety got worse, because now my client had something to lose. She had a family, she had a child, and she was still afraid of her ex-husband, of her first husband. And in only one therapy session with RTT therapy, I was able to help her to discover what is the root cause. And we have eliminated the cause, and she was feeling perfect after this. So sometimes genetics or environment is not the main reason. It can be a lot of stress and trauma because of the divorce, because of some accident, because of something that wasn't treated with therapy. And but also there is a very important factor of family history, because if there are other mental health disorders in the family or anxiety disorder, a person can have bigger risk to develop this mental health condition. But also childhood trauma, for example, people who were abused, physically abused, severely beaten, and punished with corporal punishments, they develop this tendency for anxiety and depression in adolescence, and the risk is 3 times higher than normal risks. Yeah, and also these traumatic events can happen in adulthood, not only in childhood, and this can all lead to anxiety. But also some physical health conditions, such as thyroid problems or arrhythmia, can contribute to developing anxiety, constant worry, having no control over feeling tense and restless. But using caffeine, certain medicines and substances can even make the symptoms of anxiety worse. But also it is very important to know that men and women have equal chances to develop anxiety, but social anxiety affects women and men equally, but generalized anxiety disorder affects women more than men.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's social kind of affect to that, is it? Because it's almost, we have this saying, is it, like women get hysteric, or women, it's almost almost expected. Second, other things that it's that environmental effect is that it's sometimes people saying I inherited, my mother has it, but it's actually not inherited in genetic point way. It's a learned behavior, it's a learned way of thinking. So very often when if mothers have just this anxiety and they're catastrophizing and they're worried about everything, or they are very negative about everything, they their children just learn this behavior. They expecting they needs to be like that, because instead of telling them from them when they are little, world is safe, and okay, you need to learn to navigate in the world, you need to learn this and this, maybe you need to learn the self-defense, or you need to learn that you washing your hands after you go to toilet, that's safe way to live, you know. But instead of that, like if it's over level, is that if it's like too much protection, if it's that anxiety of the mother about what will happen, and you cannot go out, and you cannot do this, and you cannot have the friends over because they will bring the germs, or you cannot you know, you have little fever, you know, have to wrap up to the cotton, then actually passing on that anxiety on the child, because the child doesn't feel safe, doesn't understand why, but doesn't feel safe, and not learning how can react healthily to situations in the life, and disconnecting from that own power, disconnecting from that own understanding of the world, and going to this life and anxiety. Often also, it's, as you said, it's related to the physical punishments, or being subject of abuse, physical, mental, but also sometimes it's often that perfectionism, that big pressure. If it's a big pressure on the children, they just losing that belief that they can cope, and they developing anxiety, they cutting themselves out from the social circle, so they don't want to go to school, they don't want to go out, they just closing out, hiding, because they believe that they cannot live up to that expectation, that pressure is just too much for them, and they create in this anxiety of being seen and being visible, because what they think about themselves. I had the one client, and she developed anxiety because of permanent comparison with somebody else, that she's doing something as somebody else, or she's not doing, or that person is better, or she should do it like that person, and that create her that feeling that she is not enough, she's not worthy, and she cannot do that because she's trying to be as so many other people, and that's impossible, is it? We can be all only ourselves, and I think that's what we often see, that people with anxiety and turning to depression, it's about that negative self-talk. Is that they would say like, this will happen to me, I cannot be healthy, I cannot get better, I cannot get better job, and nobody would like me when if I will get, and they have these negative self-talk, which lead them to deepening that feeling of being disconnected, deepening that feeling of isolation, deepening that feeling of fear of the world around, and often when we could ask, I did ask myself in some moments of my time, and I was telling my clients, ask who voice is actually saying it. Is it really your voice, or is it somebody when you was little telling you that you are this or this and this, or you cannot do this, or you should do this, stuff like that? Is it really your voice? And I think that all of us will find something which are not our voice in our heads, is it? But that's recognizing that differentiating what is actually we telling ourselves from what we were told. That's great awareness, and anybody can start doing it. If so anybody listen to us and you suffer with anxiety, really start listening to who is telling it in your mind, where the sentences came from, because then it can work as old cassette player. I know that new generation don't know it so well, but it's like you, instead of keeping it playing on loop or again and again, you can start hit the button, erase, 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 erase. This is not mine. If you realize what is not yours, you can start erasing, you can start saying delete, delete, erase. It's not mine, and change that to what is actually your voice. So Lela, what you advising your clients if they dealing with with anxiety, how they can cope, what is like quick fix or like quick what they can do if they feel overwhelmed with anxiety.
Yeah, I always tell them that anxiety disorders are one of the most treatable mental health disorders, and they should get treatments like talk therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, or RTT that incorporates many modalities, CBT, psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, neuroscience, and it is the perfect and the most effective way to eliminate the root cause and not only mask the symptoms with medications and therapy. I also tell them that they have to treat anxiety because it can contribute to more serious health conditions. Because if they constantly have the feelings of fear, uncertainty, worry, this is overwhelming. And this raises the risk for medical problems such as heart disease, diabetes, substance abuse, depression. So they need to realize that by helping themselves, they are going to invest in long-term mental health, physical health, even if sometimes people think this is a big investment, this costs a lot of money. Well, they should think about how much it is going to cost them if they don't treat it, if they don't have therapy sessions, especially if it's children. Children also need to get treatments on time, because if your child doesn't outgrow the fears and worries that are typical for young children, and where there are too many fears, too many worries that interfere with normal life of a child, with school, home play activities, the child can be diagnosed with anxiety disorder, especially if children are very afraid when they are away from parents. That this is called separation anxiety, and many children have this. Or if they have an extreme fear about specific thing or situation, like going to school or going to doctors, or sometimes having a dog, seeing a dog on the street, fears, extreme fears of insects, spiders. If kids are very afraid of going to school because they were bullied there, this is a very serious problem. And you cannot just say to your children, oh, you have to be strong, you can do it. This also happened to me when I was younger, and I just got over it. Your child doesn't have the tools to cope with this. And sometimes children have generalized anxiety and they are worried for the future, especially children who live in foster families, and they get different families from because of the decision of social services, and they're constantly worried about what is going to happen in 6 months. Or in 1 year, where are they going to live, in which family, are they going to be abused again, sexually, mentally, emotionally? And this is overwhelming. This is why they use substances like drug or alcohol to escape this feeling of overwhelm. Sometimes kids have repeated episodes of sudden, unexpected, intense fear that includes symptoms like dizziness, shaking, sweaty, having trouble breathing, heart pounding, and this is all connected with panic attacks. This is all about panic attacks. So you cannot just force your kid to be like other children or compare them with a neighbor or a brother or a sister and say, look at your sister, she is perfect, she's so good, she listens to my advice. And this is something that is very, very deeply connected with their trauma, and maybe something they're even hiding from their parents. Maybe there are children who are hiding sexual abuse and nobody knows about this, and you cannot find out without therapists who is going to work with your kids and find out what is the root cause.
Yeah, that's it's so important, yeah, because actually sometimes people say, no, I know my child, it's nothing like that. And people will be so surprised. In so many cases the child will not tell them because something happened to them, they would be bullied, they would be abused, and they would not tell their parents because they would believe that they would not accept it, that they sometimes actually because they don't want to make them worried, they just think about the good well-being of their parents, and they would say like, or they have so much work, they are working hard, or they have own health issues, or they have own full plate, I would say. I didn't tell them because it would make them just worried and put them more on. And that's that issue is it was the child creating the trauma response from that it cannot express it, so start to suppressing it, start to stuck up all these emotions inside, and just developing these trauma responses of being frozen or being angry if you fight, or keep hiding, keep running away from situations, so don't want to go to school or avoiding situations. But also it's about that sometimes same actually anxiety, it show up with this uncontrolled anger of being aggressive. That's also actually sign of anxiety for children because they're just not coping, it's just overwhelming. Yeah. And often people not taking like that, and they're saying, oh, they are so hard to deal with, and why they have to be like this. I did nothing wrong to them, but it's their way of trying to kind of survive. Is it trying to show that they do exist, that they're important, and trying to kind of put themselves somewhere to safe, they feel unsafe. And it's so important to realize that, and it's nothing against parents because we all have own load of things, so but if the child has anxiety, it's ideal if also parents look out for therapy, because there is something why the children are not feeling safe, why they're not coming and telling them, why they're not finding them as that coping mechanism, why they're not finding them as the source of safe, feeling love, feeling enough. And life's happening, hard things happening, but if the child doesn't feel safe home, which can be because parents coming through divorce, because they have the health issues or they have their own trauma, which is very often. And it's about that, it's about break the cycle, get help. If you struggle, don't care just about your child, go and get the therapy, because actually children cannot get better. Even I have parents who coming and they want their children get better, they see that their children struggling, but the child cannot get better until actually parent also resolve their issues, because they are part of the problem. They are part of the problem with their own trauma responses, their own reactions on their child related to their childhood trauma, or trauma that happened to their lives, if it was, for example, veterans, or of people coming have some accidents or have some big health issue which traumatize them. So it's about that sometimes it actually needs to be treated all generations to really break that cycle of passing on. But what is really positive is that because the child brain is still very flexible, it's developing, the neurosynapse is creating much quicker than for adults, changing easier, the neuroplasticity is much higher. It's actually taking much less for them to if they get the right therapy, if they go, if they are treated, they recover much quicker. They can really change their life and be happy, joyful, beautiful, amazing kids they supposed to be, and leave that trauma behind. So it's really important and to start the treatment as soon as possible, if you know where it is possible. And I see it on because I'm working with some teenagers, and that's so great how they changing so quickly, and how they growing, and how they maturing, you know, in big speed, because their brain is still, you know, developing, and it's for them much easier to leave behind, let it go, because it's not so stuck in, it's not decades of piling up. So so it's really encouraging to work with young people, because they growing growing to the adults without trauma, even if they had the traumatic events in their life as children.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, Barb, because certain kids have a personality trait such as being shy and withdrawn and introvert, and they hide emotions more often than extrovert children. And especially if a child is feeling that they're neglected by their parents, they will tend to hide a lot of anger and aggression and rage. But the underlying emotion behind anger is always pain, because a child will always feel pain whenever a parent is not spending time with them, not playing with them, not doing homework, because the child feels invisible, feels that he's not important, and not loved, not worthy, because if their own parents don't have the time for them, if they're only working and being busy, it must be the truth that they're not worthy of love and their attention, care, compassion. And very, very often, parents don't even realize that neglect is also a type of abuse, because it is called the invisible abuse, because there are no bruises and no scars and wounds physically on the body, but the child's soul is deeply, deeply hurt, sometimes broken and hopeless. And people don't even realize that even if they feel broken, they can put all those fragments of their soul back together and heal from their trauma. Sometimes this trauma is from the childhood, and it's been a very long period of time that they were suffering in silence, hiding their emotions. But sometimes the trauma is from adulthood. And sometimes we have many, many traumas that are grouped together, and that are just contributing to worsen our mental health. And besides anxiety, we also develop depression. And if there are also family history of depression and anxiety, we have more chances to suffer from that condition. And I would like to say to everyone who's listening to our podcast that if somebody needs mental health, you should encourage them. You should understand them and have compassion. Don't judge people who need mental health. Don't reject them, because it can happen to everyone. It can happen to children, to adults, to old people, and we need to have more compassion and understanding for each other, especially people who are thinking that they're strong, that they can overcome anything, they can cope with everything, they have overcome so many hardships in life. They should understand that everything affects their mental health. Every pain, every trauma affects their coping skills.
True is that, yeah, some people recover by own will and finding own way, and that's great. And if people are able to do so, that's amazing. If they find own way how to leave the past behind. But it's also important to recognize that quite often a lot of people just suppress the past and live in big pretend and just stop thinking about what happened to them. And yes, they will work and they will have relationship and they will work hard, and sometimes they will become workaholics. Sometimes they would become like extremely successful but quite hard on other people. And that sometimes it's really about that need of facing that past and actually admit that things happen and how we react to them, and realize that we are still lovable, we are still perfect as we were, and we don't need to work 24 hours per day to prove the right to exist and stuff like that. So sometimes it could be for those who overcome this own trouble with the kind of own power will, hard to accept that others are struggling, but it's not unusual that there will come moment for them in their life when they felt broke because it's just too much, and then they kind of really falling down very hard and don't even see why. It can be illness, which they actually can be from that suppressing things. They can have heart attack, or they can have something which the ward, the doctors and everything around will tell them, no, you has to stop. You has to stop, just carry on. You has to face what your life is really about and what did happen. And sometimes we see it in the movies, but it's a reality for many that they really need to go and look back on the past, and they are maybe in their 40s, their 50s or 60s, or they need to look back what actually did happen to them. And it's sometimes not easy, and it's not sometimes it's not easy. It's not easy. But if they do, they find out that feeling of the life can be completely different, that they did cope and that they did do things, but that feeling they had, that true joy and true happiness wasn't really there often, but they can still find it. So I want to thank you, Lela, for your great words and encouragement for everybody. I think that is really important to see that there is hope, and if you suffer or somebody who suffer with the panic attacks or anxiety, that is possible to seek the treatment, and it's actually the things which can be solved quite quickly. So they have the root cause and they can be resolved. And if you will follow us or subscribe, you will see the next episode in which we will have the special host, special guest, which will be Jimmy Toro, which is artist and survivor of quite severe childhood trauma, and he will speak about his journey of recovery from the childhood trauma. So in our next episode, we will have the guest Jimmy Toro. So subscribe or follow, and you will be notified about our next episode. Also, if you will leave any comments or what you would like to hear about the childhood trauma or any mental illnesses in our next episode, we will like to see any of your suggestions. So thank you for your support, and see you next and listen to you next time.